Moedim v'simcha. Welcome to the second night of Sukkot, Hol HaMoed, and we are going to do another little piece that I called Sefer Yetzira, Creating Consciousness. We began this last night with the idea of God creating directionality, up, down, right, left, forward, backward. Because when you're infinite, there's no such thing as direction. You're everywhere. So how can there's where is up and down in space? Where is right and left? It took man to be created to give directionality to the universe. You might say, okay, well, that's off. The moon is that way and Mars is that way. But all that consciousness had to be created. But where's the root of real creating consciousness? It's in the letters of language. Every human baby starts with no language. And it starts to learn language from day one, through little sounds, through communications of emotions, feelings, hunger, fear, happiness, anger. Emotions begin to emerge into a person's mind from their heart, and they don't have words yet. So are they conscious? Yes, they're conscious of their feelings. Are they intellectually conscious? Can they put it into words? Not yet. So consciousness relies on language. Language, of course, is made of letters. Letters become words, which represent concepts and images and people, places, and things. And then those words are combined together to create a sentence, which is a larger concept. And then an even larger string of concepts becomes a paragraph that creates a full idea of something. Now, when that's going on inside a baby's mind, he's beginning to learn to think. Now, think about it for a second. Can you think about yourself if you have no language? Can you self-reflect without language? Now, I could say, are you able to remember without language? You say, well, yes, I have pictures in my head are memories of things, memories of events that caused fear or caused love, events that caused excitement or sadness. But they're still not poised into language. So the last time we talked about this, we understood the tree of life is these 22 letters connected by 10 sefirot, traits in the soul of humanity, that these traits are connected to each other and communicate to each other through the letters. So think of it like a thought influences a feeling. And but there has to be a connector between the two. Well, the letters of the Aleph Bet, the primordial original language, connect your ability to think with your ability to feel, with your ability to cognate or to take an idea, a feeling, and get it into words. And once you get it into words, you can self-reflect on those words. Is this a true thought? Is it a false thought? Is this feeling justified or is it unjustified? So what here in the second chapter of Sefer Yetzira, Rabbi R.A. Kaplan is translating Ram Avinu's book, 22 foundation letters, 3 mothers. We talked about these last night. The Shin, that connects the right and left brain. The Aleph, that connects the right and left arm and lobes of the lungs. I said, and Mem, that connects the right and left kidneys or the right and left thighs. So these letters are translating information at a sublingual level, okay? But they're helping create language that we can communicate back to ourselves. So like if a baby cries, right? Something's hurting in his stomach, but he doesn't have the words to say, my stomach hurts. He can only cry. So he's conscious of his pain at the level of pain, but he's not conscious at the level of intellectual processing to be able to give a name to his experience. And without this ability to give a name to our experience, I remain at a lower level of reality, a lower level of the ability to experience life and to share that experience. The Rav goes on, the three mothers are Aleph, Mem, Shin, we said this, and their foundation is a pan of merit. This literally means the scales, the old-fashioned scales where you have two chains hanging down and two pans and they go up and down. Well, this is the pan of merit. But there's three actually. There's the right and the left and the center. And these are the qualities we just mentioned too that represent or merit, that goodness, or liability, debt, or sin. And so he's telling us they're right here in the middle of the tree of life, meaning that essentially our heart's main spiritual job is to weigh things, to weigh what we're experiencing. So if I see something that looks dangerous, I'm like the Tarzan story, a boy raised in the forest by wolves. He learns very quickly that the tiger is dangerous. You see a tiger, he knows danger. That doesn't process in language. He doesn't need language for that. His heart's already telling him. So the heart takes feelings and starts to weigh them. Oh, I love this person. I remember this person. Oh, but that person left me. Oh, but this person that I'm seeing now, I remember them. They liked me. Why are they making that frowning face at me now? Maybe they don't like me. And see, so the heart is weighing these concepts. And this quality is called mishpat, the ability to judge or to weigh. That ability to judge or weigh things gets translated into language, and that language becomes part of our consciousness. But before we have language, we have the ability to weigh good and bad, or what seems to be good or what seems to be bad, what seems to be happy or its opposite, etc. But until there is language, consciousness is not yet formed. So as the Sefer Yetzira is building our knowledge of Hebrew, of the 22 letters in the 10 Sefirot, of the 6 directions, which we waved this morning, the 6 directions with the lulav and the etrog and the hadassim, right? The citron fruit, the date palm branch, the myrtle branch, and the willow branches. When we're waving them in the 6 directions, we are also creating space anew, here and now, in a microcosmic way, compared to the way that God created space with these letters and these traits in the beginning of time. So the creation is going on all the time. And when you join it with the proper moves and the proper consciousness and the proper speech and the proper understanding, then you become a mini creator. And you create space. And that space is the energy field around you. And it can be wide, it can be tall, it can be thick, it can be thin. It can be sped up, it can be slowed down. It can move right, it can move left. It can move on diagonals or horizontals or verticals. All of these directions of the energy movement are also trackable through today's equipment can track our electromagnetic field. That field of energy is translating in this scientific medium called electromagnetism, the energy of the soul as it moves around our body. Now, if you studied a little bit of osteopathy, you will learn that there's a whole soul body that surrounds the body. And the osteopathic doctor, he's attempting to manipulate that energy to bring health and balance and well-being to a person. The Kabbalah taught us a long time before osteopathy that the soul body of the human being is only one layer of many soul bodies that we inhabit, or that give us garments. So this ability of the two sides of the heart and its center becoming a set of scales to measure the incoming reality, which creates the ability to choose to run or to stay put, right? That is happening in the heart. And he tells us an interesting thing. The tongue, the degree of the tongue decides between them. That the actual balancing mechanism in this set of scales is your tongue. It's the way you talk. It's the way you communicate. And so your communication, which we just said, has to be in language. It doesn't have to be actually, but it needs to be in language for me to have consciousness of it. It can lean to the right or the left, to kindness or to judgment, from mercy to cruelty, from patience to impatience. All the different emotions that we feel are judged through our thoughts, which is actually an extension of our mind. There's a little muscle at the back of the tongue that actually the Zohar says receives speech. Before it's ever becomes speech by talking it, the brain sends the electronic I don't want to say symbols, the electronic sparks of information to the back of the tongue before the tongue even starts to move, which obviously is going to be necessary to speak. So that place in the back of the tongue is receiving information from the brain, electronic information, and that is coming. But of course, in Kabbalah, we don't differentiate too much between, at this level of consciousness, between electronic and soul, because they're both utilizing the same network of communication. The soul manipulates or influences the nervous system. And that relationship between the physical and the spiritual is a very, very refined one. Now, so when we make a decision between to get close to something or to get far to something, to look up to something or to look down at something, that is because the heart is judging based on our prior information that we've learned and stored and remembered in language. And these three mothers, the Sefer Yetzira goes on, Aleph, Mem, Shin. He tells us an interesting thing. The Mem is the letter of humming. It writes it, hums. Shin hisses. Shin, the sound of the shin, is a hiss, right? And Aleph is the breath of air, which actually has no pronunciated consonant. It's just pure air flowing through the system. And the Aleph decides between whether you hum or you hiss. So what's the big deal between humming and hissing? Well, hissing is considered a vibration of judgment. You know, what happens if someone says to you something you don't like, or makes an off-color joke you don't like? Right? You make a hiss sound is the symbol of your rejection of something. And when you go, that's usually the sound that kids make at dinner, right? Because they're accepting this food smells good, looks good. I want some of that. So the mem is the letter of the receiving of something, and the shin is the letter of rejecting. And that vibration, we know the vibration without putting it in language. Again, it's not yet conscious, but it's recorded in the mind as the way we react to reality again. And here, but we're starting to use language to communicate with sounds. Just simple humming or simple hissing. Of course, we make a lot of sounds, but there are only 7 major, well, according to Kabbalah, there's 10 major vowels, but there's only 5 elemental vowels, and then they're combined together to create 10. But those A, E, Ah, O, Oo. You see, each of those, depending on the way you inflect them, creates communication. Ah. What's the sound when you make ah? It's a good sound. It's a receptive sound. It's a sound of pleasure. O is a sign of questioning. E, Ooh, I don't like that. Ooh, I don't like it more. Oh, and then there's a ah and there's an o and there's an o. There's really three different variations between the kamats, the patach, and the cholam. Those three letters, those three vowels, and each of them represent different mental responses. So you see, our body is trained to respond to sounds. And that's because of the sound itself is represented by the letters, and the letters get processed in our mind to create concepts, and then we have consciousness. And that's all being suggested here in these few lines of the Sefer Yetzira. So when you think about that for a minute, you see that we really are language processors, and the degree of our consciousness depends heavily on our language ability. Of course, your moral processing is not the same, because moral processing depends on having a set of laws that we respect and honor and live by. So that introduces a whole nother level of soul, which is the ruach, which is the emotional level, and of course the neshama, the level of thinking itself, pure thought that's not been affected by emotion or action yet. So all these concepts have to be bound together into one experiential moment in a human being, and then he can decide for himself through the decisor of consciousness, which is the heart, which has this connection to the tongue that tells us if something is moving towards kindness or moving towards judgment. And you can feel it in your heart every time you have a judgment on somebody, and you feel it in your heart every time you have a moment of caring and compassion for somebody. And that feeling is part of the miracle of the way God designed us. And the fact that we can then translate it into words and create with it, and then share that creation with other beings, that, my friends, is tikkun olam, the fixing of the world. Because if we can all do that with true sensitivity and compassion, we're going to live in a different world. So it's really a tremendous thing to even look at Sefer Yetzirah. To learn it is great, and to share it with others is another level altogether. And I thank you all for being there. And I want to wish you a Hag Sameach. And it's a lifetime journey, this book. Trust me. And no matter how much you've meditated and how many countries you've been to and how many meditation groups you've gone to, this book will continue to unfold ourselves in its words and reveal ourselves to ourselves from the highest to the lowest level. God bless you all. Hag Sameach. We'll see you again with our daily classes. God bless.